Also in London, from the outbreak of the Franco-Prussian War, was the dealer Paul Durand-Ruel, who, during the 1860s, had represented artists of the Barbizon Landscape School, and who, in December 1870, established a gallery in London where he held the first of 10 annual exhibitions of the Society of French Artists, as it was called. It was Daubigny who introduced and no doubt recommended Monet to Durand-Ruel, and from that meeting an extraordinary history flows, because Durand-Ruel, having set himself up in London, returned to Paris, set himself up in business there, and set up a branch in America. And from there, I won't say vast numbers, but considerable numbers of Impressionist painting, and particularly Monet, began to flow into the United States of America. Although in 1870 Impressionism had yet to be named as a style, it was already established, it had already been established since 1869 in the work of Renoir, Monet, Pissarro, and Sisley. This sort of broken touch, this painting en plein air, out in the open, sur le motif from direct observation. They had already devised a much looser, more rapid way of painting, which they were to develop and to refine through the 1870s and 1880s. So Monet, Renoir, Pissarro, and Sisley exhibited in Durand-Ruel's gallery, and in fact this was one of the paintings, Monet's The Thames and Westminster of 1871. A key work in Monet's development. It shows the Impressionist style already fully formed, and it also shows a subject to which Monet would return again and again, the Houses of Parliament, the Thames, a subject that he particularly loved, especially when the killer smog was down thick and low. Monet was nothing if not a painter of atmosphere. And so just to remind you, this is one of the paintings from 1904, the Houses of Parliament, with the sun breaking through the, well, it says fog, but I think it has to be smog. And it belongs to a series that he began in 1899 and actually continued to paint right through until 1904 with virtually annual visits in order to continue painting the series. And seeing this fiery representation of what had become one of the most iconic buildings in London in a very short space of time inevitably links one back to the burning of the original Palace of Westminster on the 16th of October 1834, as depicted by Turner in a range of paintings, notably this one here. As I say, the Houses of Parliament at Westminster, which were built following this disaster, became, or had become really by the 1850s, before they were even completed, one of the absolutely iconic buildings, one of the emblems of identity for Britain and, I dare say, for the British Empire. When he was in London, Sisley had visited museums and exhibitions, and of course he admired and studied Turner and Constable. So where could Monet, Pissarro, and Daubigny in 1870, 1871 now see Turner and Constable's paintings in London? Well, I mentioned that in 1856 the Turner bequest had been received into the National Gallery, from which 8 were placed on permanent display in the Turner Room, and one of them was the Fighting Téméraire, tugged to her last berth to be broken up, dating from 1838, a painting described as a poignant elegy for a passing era. Another painting, I'm not going to go through all 8, but this one is particularly relevant to our discussion. Turner's Rain, Steam and Speed, the Great Western Railway. Some of Turner's compositions by this stage were almost abstract, the forms dissolved in a haze of light and colour, the paint so delicate it appears almost to have been floated onto the canvas, one critic writes. And the story is told of Constable, of Turner arriving at the Royal Academy with the 8 canvases that he was entitled to exhibit by virtue of the fact that he was now a full Royal Academician and so his paintings didn't have to be subjected to any kind of jury or selection process. And what his fellow artists saw as Turner lugged these canvases into the Royal Academy were these incomprehensible fields of brilliant colour. They would be hung on the walls, and Turner, with one or two deft touches of paint, would resolve these abstract colour fields into a landscape, dripping colour, I may say, dripping paint onto the other artists' work that happened to be hanging below. But one very interesting observation that Constable made of Turner's colour beginnings, exhibited in the Royal Academy in 1836, was he seems to paint with tinted steam, so evanescent and so airy. He seems to paint with tinted steam. And you can imagine the effect of this on young artists, French artists, going into London in 1870, 1871, and examining these paintings, studying these paintings at very close range. And in fact, here is a painting called Colour Beginning, so abstracted, but I think you take it that there is a strand or a seashore here with fog or mist down on the sea and something of a sky. But to my eye, this is something that could almost have been produced in the 1950s or 1960s. But it's the kind of painting that absolutely baffled, mystified some of Turner's contemporaries in the 1830s and 1840s. Well, Renoir visited London on several occasions and tells us, "It was the Turners that first attracted me to London." Pissarro later recalled that he and Monet admired Turner, whose aims they thought similar to their own. And to his son Lucien, in September 1888, in Paris, when he went to the Louvre, Pissarro wrote, "Isn't it senseless that there are no Turners here, no Turners in the Louvre, no Turners in Paris?" But anyway, back to rain, steam and speed. Constable, Turner, Bonington and the English watercolour painters of the Norwich School had a role in the development of French landscape painting, one art historian has written, because British culture and industry were then penetrating France, serving as beacons of modernity. That's something that cries out to be investigated further, but everyone here will know that Britain was the first country in which the Industrial Revolution occurred, and I've already mentioned that the Industrial Revolution occurred much later in France. And in fact, the opening of the railway network in France from the 1840s involved British engineers and navvies. But here in the 1840s, Turner is presenting the railways as an agent of the sublime, as something to inspire awe, fear and wonder, where beyond the sense of regret and loss that permeates the painting, The Fighting Temeraire. But this is a painting to do with modernity, a painting to do with the future.